Meeting at the crossroads where the two forbidden subjects of religion and politics intersect. This is the Sophie Scholl Roundtable. I'm Mel McGinnis, the host. To my right is Norm Carlson. To my far right is Garrett Payne. And to my left is Kurt Olson. We're here today to discuss an interesting letter that has not been published in our local paper, the Post Journal. When I saw this letter, I asked Norm, is it all right for me to post it on Facebook? I posted it, and wow, did it create a stream of responses. And the stream of responses, including people that I graduated from high school with, people that I went to college with, people around this area, all joined in that conversation in which there were a diversity of viewpoints. Well, you might be wondering, what is this letter? Norm has it. I'm going to have Norm read it.
Our current election mess was foreseeable, preventable, and contrived. Until 2002, New York State jurisdictions and thousands of others throughout the country used voting machines manufactured here in Jamestown. They gave instant, unequivocal, and incontestable tallies. The few paper ballots were rarely determinative. Those machines made cheating, fraud, and bias painfully difficult, which is why I think they were eliminated. Certainly one reason. Now we have metaphorical machines, the Democratic Party machines, manufacturing however many votes are needed, however long it takes, in a huge playground of their own construction, and all predefined as legitimate. That's the key point right there. They set it up, they defined it so that you can't call them fraudulent. What genius! We can't call it fraud, they say, because we are voting as the people would vote if only they were smart enough. Liberals dazzled in the blinding splendor of their own perceived superiority, importance, and entitlement, and nearly catatonic in zeal and hate, see power as the ultimate legitimacy. They're furious that anyone would question their divine mandate. Republicans cheat in elections too, but they're bunglers, amateurs. Democrats are big league professionals, impresarios.
Wow! That was a mouthful, and you can understand why. It got a conversation started on Facebook. Norm, you want to say anything more about the letter you wrote there?
Not unless you have some questions.
Yeah. Why did you write it?
Why did I write it?
Yeah.
Because I had this thing about saying things that you're not supposed to say. And I have this thing about truth.
Likewise.
Yes.
And I know quite a bit about the voting machines from my historical interests.
See, that's what I found very interesting.
I even toured the plant twice where they were maintained and even upgraded. I know I have so much respect for those machines and how brilliantly designed they were to prevent tampering and cheating.
Because I'm looking at this, it seems like the more complex things get technologically with computers, the more susceptible things are to fraud.
Well, the voting machines, the only electricity was in a light bulb that hung over the top.
Right.
They were just marvelously, ingeniously designed to thwart attempts at tampering. And I'm sure that the election officials in both parties, but maybe more one than another, were completely frustrated that their creativity couldn't be exercised.
I thought it was a marvelously written piece to show that those old-fashioned voting machines are there for the prevention of what we're seeing now.
Exactly.
Garrett, Kurt, have any comments?
I actually remember the very first time I voted at the Randolph Fire Hall after I turned 18. And I believe it must have been in the fall of '99 because my birthday's on November 14th. So I think I fell short unless you were allowed to pre-register. I can't remember at the time, but I remember it was the old voting machine. I don't know if they were manufactured in Jamestown, but they had the manual buttons. There was no electricity, like Norm said, and you closed the curtain. And I believe when you went out and opened that curtain, it reset all the levers.
Yep.
That's right.
The next person went in.
You could change your mind all you wanted to.
Yep.
You could dither and daddle, but when you reached over and pulled that curtain, that was it.
Yep.
Exit.
Unequivocal.
It
And
was vote cast, done.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Unequivocal. There was no argument about it.
Yeah.
And when that day was done, the back of the machine was unlocked, and they printed out on paper the tallies instantly.
What has happened to those machines? Are they still around?
I saw at the company where I said they were maintained, I went past there one day on my way to a wedding reception, and the parking lot was filled 3 deep with those machines smashed and laid on their side.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Wow. You would think someone would want to preserve them.
They were scrapped.
Dear.
Now, New York State and
travesty.
places where the voting machines were used had no problems. Florida, the counties down there, Dade County, Brevard County, they had problems. They used other systems. They had our voting machines, and they had turned them in. I talked to the fellow who went down and got them back, and they bought the newer system.
and when you say Dade and Broward, those are counties historically down there.
That were at issue in the 2000 election.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I also...
Whatever reason, they changed from those voting machines to something else. Wasn't because the something else was better.
Right. Amen.
Yeah. So, folks, if you're listening, you're seeing a contrast to what was and now what is. And as we're watching voting taking place earlier and earlier, and the counting go on later and later, this is abnormal.
Well, ostensibly, the reason they wanted to get rid of the voting machines was because they couldn't accommodate enough foreign languages, and they couldn't accommodate the handicapped adequately enough. Well, the handicapped were always accommodated the same way they're accommodated now
Well, absentee
with the
ballot.
paper ballot.
Yeah.
And which is worse, not being able to have 100 foreign languages on your ballot, or having what we have now, the mess and the confusion and the opportunities for fraud?
Exactly.
Well, the question was obviously answered, but not the way we would answer it.
Yeah. And I think the left is very content with what they're trying to foist on the public today.
Well, they're delighted with it. Give some room for their creativity. All the ways they have. Look, when I stepped in the building this year, the first thing, all the years of my life, I had walked in there. I had never missed an election, only one primary. Since I came of age, I signed that book, and there was that book. This year, it was an electronic pad.
Yes,
Now,
that's
Yep.
right.
right there, right
Yep.
to the beginning. Who is to say, where's the record of that? The electronic records are so evanescent, so vulnerable. Why was that done?
I know.
You know, and I fill out the ballot on paper. Well, how do I know how many times somebody runs that through, or whether somebody's thrown a switch or set up the chip ahead of time to give it a discount, or, you know?
Yeah. And I don't know what the solution is, you know. I don't think anybody's going
Well,
to go back to the old
same
machines. But
the solution is going back to the moon. People say, why can't we go back to the moon? Because we don't want to spend the money and take the effort to do it. We could make a voting machine like these old voting machines if we wanted to.
yeah, if we wanted to.
You think we couldn't? I mean, there the answer is we just don't want to take the answer.
Yeah.
That's true. So, folks, I hope you're really enjoying this conversation because you're getting some excellent history here, as well as what we need to do to protect the integrity of the vote. I couldn't help but notice the reactions to Norm's article, and I thought, here's one. Did any of you all forget that God is in control? It doesn't matter if fraud was committed. It doesn't matter when you serve the King of the universe, when your Father literally breathed all of creation into life. None of this political nonsense matters. What matters is the neighbors who need a meal, the girl at work who's being abused by her husband, the family whose child has cancer. Let's just love people. To me, I say, well, doesn't justice matter?
Yeah, a lot of conflicts and non sequiturs in that statement, I would say. Well, isn't the Lord of the universe in control of that situation at home where the wife is being abused by her husband? So by the same logic she started with, we shouldn't be concerned with any of that either.
Correct. Exactly.
I always marvel at Christians how they divide up the work between themselves and God.
What do you mean by that?
Exactly what you're talking about and exactly what he's talking about. You know, exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, another asked me, this was from high school, who asked me, why did you mention Norm being an atheist? Because the reason why I did is I think people misunderstand Norm. In other words...
No, that's not going to prevent it.
That's not... I think, how many atheists believe like you do when you say the heart of man is desperately wicked and deceitful above all things?
You know, well, just because you're an atheist doesn't mean you can't read or quote the Bible.
Right.
Yeah. When I first met Norm, I had just finished reading George Will's Conservative Sensibility, and George Will is kind of in the same cast as Norm. He's he describes himself as a low voltage atheist, but he's a rock solid conservative.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, my lack of religious belief is a personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I don't feel any need to disabuse people of their religious delusions, but I am absolutely rock solid conservative. I'm not neo, I'm not alt, I'm not compassionate conservative, I'm just plain old fashioned regular conservative.
I think of some other responses I got. Sorry, Mel, this evidence ranks right up there with cave painting proving the existence of aliens. So very dismissive of it. Another said, no fraud, nothing proved. Department of Justice, no fraud. Well, I'd look at the Department of Justice and say, I think there's problems there. We need to stop undermining the electoral system.
Talk about irony,
Exactly. Exactly.
That's Norm's point.
Well, you know, I marvel at how the Democrats and the media keep invoking this mantra. There is no evidence of fraud. There, you know, I can see the little thing they're dangling, you know, in front of the hypnotic subject. How do we know that? How could there not be? What human activity that involves the acquisition and distribution of power, fame, and money is accomplished without any fraud? Tell us how this was done, and we'll apply it to all areas of life.
And with that said, I think we will stop there with this segment of our Sophie Scholl Roundtable. We'll pick it up in our next edition of this roundtable. Thank you for joining us.